She walked onto the set like she owned it, flashing her signature smirk, adjusting the designer blazer that screamed, "Don't mess with me." Markle wasn't here for a polite conversation. She came for validation, applause, and maybe, just maybe, a little revenge. But sitting across from her wasn't some overly agreeable journalist. It was Howard Stern, the radio legend who built an empire asking the questions no one else dared to. And he wasn't about to roll over just because royalty walked in wearing heels. The View's studio buzzed with his usual pre-show energy. Cameras were being adjusted. Mugs were perfectly placed on the iconic coffee table. And the audience, mostly women aged 35 to 60, eagerly whispered about the morning's special guest. "She's in makeup," a stagehand whispered into his headset. "And she's got opinions." Howard Stern, already seated in the guest co-host chair for the day, looked up from his notes with that signature sardonic expression. "Good," he muttered to himself. "Let's see if she can handle mine." The intro music blared and the camera panned across the panel. Whoopi Goldberg in a composed cardigan, Joy Behar in a vibrant orange jacket, sunny, host beaming her usual PR train smile. And then entering from stage left like it was a royal procession came Meghan Markle. Applause erupted. She bass in. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whoopi began, "joining us today is an actress, philanthropist, podcast host, and of course, former royal Meghan Markle." Meghan waved, beaming, her body language oozing control. She took her seat, crossed her legs, and turned toward Joy with a perfectly calibrated smile. Joy launched into the soft questions first. "So, Meghan, what brings you here today?" "No, you've got a lot going on." "I'm here to talk about truth," Meghan replied, a subtle lift of her chin, signaling the beginning of a sermon. "Too many women are silenced. Too many people don't have a platform. I think it's important that I continue using mine responsibly." Howard leaned back, arms crossed. "Responsibly? That's a loaded word," he muttered, just loud enough for his mic to pick up. Meghan shot him a glance. "Excuse me." Howard sat forward, polite smile in place. "I just mean, when you have a platform that large, every word gets amplified. Doesn't it ever cross your mind that sometimes silence can be more powerful than another Netflix deal?" The air stiffened. "Wow," Meghan said, her smile dropping into a disapproving stare. "That's a very old-school male perspective." Whoopi chuckled nervously. All right. Let's keep it friendly. We've got a lot to cover." But Meghan was already off to the races. "Howard," she began, voice sweet but patronizing, "you made a career saying whatever you wanted, no matter who it hurt. So, I find it interesting that you would lecture me about responsibility." The audience let out a collective "Ooh." Howard nodded, unbothered. "Fair enough, but I also never claimed to be a humanitarian." Joy tried to steer things away. "Let's talk about your foundation work, Meghan." "No, let's not skip over this," Meghan interrupted, staring Howard down. "What exactly is your issue with me?" "That I married a prince? That I decided not to stay silent? Or is it just easier for you to make me the villain because I refuse to conform?" Howard exhaled slowly. "My issue, Meghan, isn't personal. It's observational. You want to be taken seriously as an advocate for mental health, women's rights, racial equity. Great. But then you brand everything you do in this misunderstood princess narrative. It's hard to tell where the cause ends and the career begins." Wow, she said again, this time with a smirk. That's rich coming from someone who spent decades profiting off shock value and locker room humor. Howard smiled thinly. Touché. I never said I was a role model. Joy stepped in again, awkwardly laughing. Maybe we can all agree everyone's evolving. Meghan rolled her eyes. I'm not interested in fake nicities. Whoopi's brows furrowed. Nobody's being fake here, Meghan. Come on, Whoopi. Meghan snapped. We all know the show doesn't ask the hard questions. That's why people like Howard show up to pretend we're edgy while still serving coffee table feminism. A gasp spread through the audience. Joy looked stunned. Whoopi leaned forward. Steely, are you calling us fake feminists? She asked, voice calm but laced with steel. Meghan uncrossed and recrossed her legs with visible irritation. I'm saying if we really cared about change, we wouldn't keep inviting men like him to hijack the narrative. Howard laughed quietly. You invited me, sweetheart. Don't pretend I crashed the gates of Buckingham. The room erupted in scattered applause and laughter. Some uncomfortable, some delighted. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Meghan snapped. You turn everything into a joke. The silence that followed was electric. Not the kind that buzzes with excitement, but the kind right before lightning strikes. Howard leaned back, exhaling through his nose like a man watching a storm he saw coming the moment she stepped onto the set. Meghan sat forward, no longer trying to conceal the fire in her eyes. It's so easy for you, isn't it? She said, voice quiet but cutting. To reduce everything to a soundbite. To tell a woman who survived global scrutiny, racism, institutional gaslighting, and betrayal to just talk about something else. That's privilege, Howard. Howard didn't flinch. And it's also privilege to get $25 million for a podcast deal and still play the victim. Whoopi's mouth twitched. Okay, let's not pretend this is Sunday night at the Apollo. She looked into the camera, the only place in the room not soaked in tension. We're supposed to be talking about healing, not tearing each other to shreds. Joy was practically frozen now, hands gripping her coffee mug like it was a life preserver. Sunny's smile was stuck mid-air, clearly unsure whether to nod or vanish. The audience didn't dare breathe too loudly. But Meghan didn't pause. You can mock the money, the deals, the attention. But you don't get to mock the trauma. Because you don't understand it. You've never had to walk into a room and wonder if everyone there hates you just for existing. Howard's voice dropped an octave. And you think I've never been hated, criticized, dragged through the mud? Come on. That's not exclusive to you. The difference is, most of us didn't get to curate the edit. Meghan let out a single sharp laugh. That's what you think? That I control the narrative? Howard, I spent 2 years of my life being told to shut up, smile, and wave. And when I finally spoke, you know what the world said. Why are you still talking? It's a trap. Damned if you do, invisible if you don't. Howard nodded slowly. That's a fair point. But talking isn't the problem. It's how you talk. Every interview, every documentary, every op-ed, it's the same hits on repeat. We get it. The firm was brutal. The press was racist. You felt alone. But now you've got power. Real power. And all you're doing is dragging the same ghosts around. And what would you prefer I do with them? Meghan snapped. Pretend they didn't happen? Suppress them so the audience stays comfortable? You know what that gets women. Suicidal. Silenced. Dead. Howard didn't respond right away. He tapped the edge of the coffee table with his finger, once, twice. Then he looked at her, expression unreadable. No one's asking you to bury it. I'm asking you to build past it. I am building, Meghan replied, voice cracking slightly. But every brick I lay, people like you come swinging with a sledgehammer, questioning whether the foundation is real. The silence following that wasn't tense, it was heavy. Even Howard blinked. Then, for the first time in the entire segment, he softened. Just a fraction. "I don't hate you, Meghan," he said, quieter now. "In fact, I admire your guts. But guts aren't grace. And right now, the world needs both." Meghan looked down at her lap, her hands finally unclenching. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "It's exhausting. Fighting to be heard. Fighting to not be reduced to a headline or a joke." Whoopi nodded solemnly. "We've all been there in one way or another. But the goal has to be something bigger than the fight." Joy chimed in cautiously. "Maybe the conversation has to move forward. We can acknowledge the pain and the progress." Howard shrugged. "I'd love to hear about the progress. Really. But it's hard when every headline is still about the palace, the press, and the pity." Meghan looked up sharply. "Pity? That's what you think this is?" "I think that's how it reads sometimes," Howard said. "You're trying to connect, but it comes off like you're trying to convert." "To what?" she asked. "To your idea of strength." "No," he said evenly. "To your idea of virtue. And the problem is, the more you insist you're above criticism, the less people believe in what you're selling." "I never said I was above criticism," Meghan said tightly. "I said I was done being defined by it." "That's fair," Whoopi said, jumping in like a mediator closing the gates on two wild dogs. "But Meghan, you have to understand, when you become a symbol, people will treat you like one. And symbols don't get to pick and choose their meaning." Meghan sat back in her chair, face unreadable. "Maybe that's the real problem. Everyone wants a piece of me. Media, fans, critics. But no one wants me. Just the version they can control, love, or destroy." The audience murmured. A few nods. A few uneasy fidgets. Howard tilted his head. "Then stop giving them the version. Give them the work." "I am," she said. "You're just too cynical to see it." "Or maybe," he said, "you're still too hurt to let anyone see the real version." Meghan's lips parted, as if to speak, but nothing came out. A long beat. Then Whoopi stood. "Okay. That's enough raw truth for one morning. We've got a musical guest waiting in the wings, and I don't want her bursting into tears just from walking onto this set." The audience laughed nervously. Meghan forced a smile. Howard stayed still, eyes on her for a moment longer before finally breaking the stare. Joy exhaled dramatically, raising her mug. "Well, if that's not morning television, I don't know what is." Sunny added quickly, "At least we're not afraid of real conversation." Meghan nodded faintly. "That's the irony," she said, mostly to herself. "People beg for authenticity. But when it shows up, they flinch." Howard leaned toward his mic one last time. "No one's flinching. We're just watching. Waiting to see what you'll do when the cameras go off." Meghan didn't respond. And this time, she didn't need to. The camera stayed wide. Nobody dared cut in with a close-up. Meghan was on her feet, trembling but composed, her arms stiff by her side as if holding back the tremor of rage. The set, once buzzing with midday energy and laughter, now felt like a bomb had gone off in a library. The audience didn't clap. They didn't even move. Howard remained seated, elbows resting on the arms of his chair, fingers laced, as if watching a familiar scene play out again, except this time, the storm had Meghan Markle's name on it. Joy looked frozen in time, her lips parted like she wanted to intervene but couldn't decide which grenade to grab first. "Okay," Whoopi said, standing straight now, both palms gently raised like a referee too tired to blow the whistle. Let's lower the temperature. Everybody, take a breath." "No," Meghan said, her voice low and sharp. "This isn't about tone. It's about respect. And I will not be lectured about how to handle my truth by a man who used to host bikini contests and call them interviews." Howard exhaled deeply. "And yet, you keep avoiding what I'm actually saying." "What you're saying," Meghan hissed, "is that I should be grateful for surviving the machine that tried to eat me alive. That I should nod and smile for the same system that commodified my pain and turned me into a global spectacle." "No," Howard said, voice steady. "What I'm saying is that you can't claim to reject the system while using its tools to build your own empire. That's not liberation. That's branding. The audience let out a collective breath that sounded more like a gasp than applause or disapproval. Just the sound of people realizing they were witnessing something they weren't sure was even allowed on daytime TV. Meghan looked to Joy again, her eyes now visibly glassy, furious and hurt. You all just sat here. Let him talk to me like that. Like I'm some manipulative liar because I dared to feel something. Because I didn't stay quiet and cute. Joy opened her mouth, but Meghan kept going. Let me be clear, I am not your princess. I am not your villain. I am not a headline you get to reshape with every new panel discussion. I am a woman who has survived more than you know, and if that makes you uncomfortable, that's your issue. Howard leaned forward. Nobody is questioning whether you've been hurt. They're questioning why you think pain makes you unchallengeable. Pain doesn't make me unchallengeable, she shot back. It makes me real. And apparently, that's the one thing people can't handle, a woman who's been broken and still dares to speak. Speaking is fine, Howard said. But what you're doing here is turning a talk show into a TED Talk where no one's allowed to raise a hand. Because you don't come with questions, Meghan said, eyes narrowing. You come with accusations dressed as insight. Oh, please, he scoffed. I'm the only one here treating you like an equal. Everyone else is walking on eggshells. You call this equality? Meghan asked. You call this conversation? Howard didn't blink. I call it honesty. Whoopi finally walked between them, standing directly in Meghan's line of sight. We invited you here, Meghan, because we believe your voice matters. But this show has always welcomed different perspectives, even uncomfortable ones. Meghan's nostrils flared. Uncomfortable is one thing. Being ganged up on while pretending it's journalism is another. Again, Howard said, unfazed, you've talked more than all of us. You've had every chance to tell your story. What you haven't done is answered a single hard question without accusing the person asking of being sexist, outdated, or bitter. Meghan turned toward him one last time. Because your questions aren't neutral. They come with judgment. With that smug little voice in your head that whispers, she asked for it. Howard shook his head. No. My voice says, she's smart. She's talented. She's got a platform most people would kill for. Why won't she use it to lead instead of relive? There it was. A pause. Then Meghan lowered her head slightly, not in defeat, but in fury held so tightly it could cut glass. She looked around at the set, the studio, the blinking red light of the camera, and then at the women who'd once called this table sacred. Do you hear yourselves? She asked, voice now eerie in its calm. You bring me on to talk about my work, and the moment I step off your script, I become too much. Too angry. Too complicated. No, Joy said quietly. You became unlistenable. That landed like a slap. Meghan inhaled, sharp and slow. Then, you know what's really exhausting? Not the interviews. Not the criticism. But the performance. The constant tightrope women have to walk. Be fierce, but not too fierce. Be strong, but palatable. Tell your story, but make sure it doesn't threaten anyone else's comfort. You're not walking a tightrope, Howard said. You're holding a microphone. And I'm just asking who you think is still listening. Meghan blinked slowly, then picked up the coffee mug in front of her, not drinking from it, just holding it like a prop, as if suddenly remembering she was still being filmed. Her tone turned eerily still. You're right about one thing, she said. People are listening. And they're tired of seeing women like me be torn apart for refusing to shrink. So maybe this segment won't win you applause, but I guarantee it will start conversations. And that's more than most people in your position have done in decades. Howard tilted his head, amused. You really do believe you're a revolution in heels? I believe I'm necessary, she said, rising again, but without fury this time. Because you, and everyone like you, have made it clear, women who dare to stop apologizing are still a threat. Whoopi stepped in again, this time holding a hand up to the camera crew. Let's go to break, she said quickly. The lights dimmed. The View logo splashed across the screen. The moment the red light on the camera went off, producers rushed the stage. Stage managers whispered frantically into headsets. Assistants hovered near the exit. Meghan was already gathering her things, jaw set, expression unreadable. Howard didn't move. He simply leaned back in his chair, arms resting calmly, eyes following her with the look of a man who knew exactly what he'd just done. Joy stared at her untouched mug. Sonny fiddled with a pen. And in the wings, studio execs debated whether they'd just aired the most honest or the most dangerous episode in the show's history. But no one said it out loud. Not yet. No, let her go, Howard said plainly. She's not interested in a conversation. She wants a coronation. You're disgusting, Meghan snapped, turning toward him. Howard nodded, expression unreadable. And you're exhausting. Silence blanketed the studio. Not just awkward, it was dense, oppressive. Meghan's expression tightened, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to pause. Then a faint voice echoed through her earpiece from backstage. We're going to cut here if she leaves the frame. But she didn't care. Without another word, Meghan Markle turned and walked off the set. Cameras scrambled to follow protocol, to pan, to redirect, but the delay was just long enough for millions of viewers to catch the back of her white suit, crisp and unbothered, disappearing behind the curtain. And then, dead air. 5 long, unedited seconds of uncertainty. No laughter. No commentary. Just the stiff, uncomfortable stillness of live TV caught off guard. The camera lingered awkwardly on Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg, their faces a collage of disbelief. Howard Stern, ever unmoved, took a sip of lukewarm tea like he was reading the morning paper. In the background, a muffled door slammed. Tension didn't just linger, it spread like fog through the studio. Joy finally exhaled and tried to salvage the moment. Well, we want to apologize to our viewers for the, unexpected turn of events. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for her cue cards. Obviously, things got a little heated. A little, Whoopi muttered. Howard leaned back into the mic calm. Grounded. Don't apologize for real conversation, he said. You asked me here to talk. And that's what I did. Joy's eyes narrowed. Her voice remained composed, but the tension beneath it was unmistakable. There's talking, Howard. And then there's turning an interview into a firing squad. I didn't fire anything, Howard countered. She walked onto this set expecting applause, not questions. That's not a talk show. That's PR. And I don't do PR. Whoopi finally spoke. Her voice was deliberate. Howard, I respect you. But there's a line between asking tough questions and provoking someone into a public meltdown. Howard shrugged. Then maybe the problem isn't the question. It's how fragile the answers are. No one clapped. The studio audience, normally buzzing, was frozen. Faces unreadable. A mix of confusion, discomfort, and contemplation settled in. That's when the studio PA system, something never heard on air, crackled to life. Brian Donnie, the executive producer. Folks, we're going to take an extended break. Please remain in your seats. But Howard wasn't finished. He turned toward the camera. The red light was still on. Whether from shock or intention, the producers didn't cut. And in that unscripted moment, Howard Stern leaned into his legacy. You know, he began, voice softer now, there's something deeply broken in our culture. When celebrities expect public sympathy as currency, that's not vulnerability. That's marketing. He gestured lightly to the now empty chair where Meghan had sat. She didn't want to talk. She wanted validation. And when she didn't get it, she walked, again. It's what she does. Perform the exit. Play the victim. Shift the narrative. Joy winced. Howard, let me finish. He straightened his blazer. We live in a time where being offended is a career. Where telling a story is more valuable than answering questions. I'm not denying Meghan went through things. I'm not excusing the monarchy's flaws. But at some point, you stop being a survivor and start being a brand. And when your brand is built on being misunderstood, any clarity becomes a threat. Silence again. No interruptions. Not even from Whoopi. Howard's tone never rose. He wasn't ranting. He was unflinchingly calm. I didn't insult her. I didn't shout. I asked questions. And she called that cruelty. Think about that. Finally, Whoopi broke in with a soft, resigned, "We'll be right back." And the screen finally cut to commercial. But the conversation wasn't over, not for viewers at home. It spilled onto Twitter, ignited Reddit threads, sparked panel debates and think pieces. Was Howard out of line, challenging Meghan Markle to answer what no one else would? Or was Meghan's walk-off another act in a carefully curated narrative? You decide. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was it hard truth or harsh treatment? And if you want more unfiltered moments like this, where the masks slip, the stories unravel, and the truth speaks louder than spin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel.